Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I've done a lot of reflecting on this year and looking at a lot of the different trends that developed, and I try to evaluate in areas where I feel like I missed the boat personally. Certain baits that really performed very, very well for a lot of anglers on the professional level, as well as just at the local level and fun fishing level. And I try to evaluate the different baits that I feel like I probably should have thrown more throughout my season. So today, we're going to go over some of the baits that I've done a little bit of reflecting on and baits that I wish I would have thrown a lot more this year because I've seen how much success other people have had using them. So, we're going to get into that. Before I do, though, I want to remind you guys if you want to help support the YouTube channel here, and you're looking to purchase tackle, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link that's in the video description for you. It really does help the channel in terms of paying for some of the expenses to put out content to hopefully help everyone catch a few extra fish. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we saw this year. Obviously, there was a major, major push at the professional level of forward-facing sonar type activity and a lot of people catching fish on minnow style baits. Now, I'm not going to say I was a late adapter of the technique because obviously it was pretty well known what guys were catching them on. What I will say is, I personally kind of feel like I didn't give enough credit to a lot of the different bait choices and the ways to fish. I think when I first saw it, it was like take a jig head, put a minnow on the jig head, cast to the fish that you see on the screen. And maybe early on, it was more about just being active and in it being uh, precise with your casts and just putting any bait down in front of the fish. But it definitely seems like now bait choice, bait presentation, technique is much more important than bait choice. Early on, I felt like you could put almost anything on a hook, throw it to the fish, and have a shot at catching that fish. But what we've seen develop is how much better certain baits are and technique wise in terms of catching those fish. So one of the things that I wish I had done more in with respect to this realm is throw two baits. One is this guy right here. This is a bait that I actually caught my biggest bass of the year on. It was an 8.5 pounder down on Toledo Bend, and it was caught on the Burley power switch. So the power switch. What I love about this bait, and it doesn't really get a ton of talk in today's minnow fishing world. But what I love about it is I can fish it in two different manners. I can fish it very much like you would fish a traditional jig head minnow for forward facing sonar fish. But I can also then give it a much more erratic motion and fish it almost like an underwater jerk bait. It's like a slash bait. If I start popping the bait, I can cover a ton of water. And I started the year off fishing this quite a bit at Toledo Bend. Had success, cashed a check, caught some really big fish. Like I said, I caught my biggest bass of the year on this one right here. This is the silver bullet color. Uh, and I went to, after that, we went to not Dale Hollow. I'm trying to think where, I think it was at the third stop, maybe was when we went to Dale Hollow, and there were a lot of people catching them on minnows. And I kind of feel like I listened to what a lot of other people were using. So I put this down to go towards some other baits, some other minnow variations that I guess I didn't have the same amount of success on. So personally, I wish I had kept this tied on more than what I did. Like I said at Toledo Bend, I had three rods rigged up with different sizes, had good success, had a good tournament. And, at that time, that was kind of when we started to see the blow up of all these minnow style baits. And everyone was talking about the latest, greatest, different uh, plastics, different jig heads. And you kind of get caught in trying a little bit of everything. And I feel like I didn't come full circle back to the power switch. And I should have done that. So that was a mistake on my part. One of the minnows, so I feel like early on everyone was talking about different minnow style baits, and I bought pretty much everything out there. towards the end or the middle part of the season, we started hearing people talk about this one. This is the depth Sakamata shad. And at that point, I felt like I had boxes upon boxes of minnow baits, and I didn't buy any of these early on. And I feel like that was a mistake because right now I feel like this is probably one of the best plastic baits to put on a jig head. And I've since experienced it and had a lot of good success. So from that standpoint, I feel like I was an early adapter, tried all these different plastic baits, then felt like I had too much tackle, so I didn't buy any of these. And now I feel like I was late. So I feel like the depth Sakamata shad has definitely established itself as one of the best soft plastic minnows that I didn't use enough during the tournament season. Another bait that I have not slept on over the years, but man, when I look back at this year's tournaments, I really did not do well. I shouldn't say do well. I didn't have one tied on, and that was a Ned rig. You know, the Little General, the Maxent Little Generals, one of my best fish catching baits over the last several years, whether largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass. And the way this season developed, and with everyone kind of pushing more offshore, I really got away from throwing the Ned rig. I got away from throwing shaky heads. And I wish I hadn't done that because they just flat out catch fish. And from that standpoint, you know, I would have loved to, in some of those tournaments, in hindsight, gone back and thrown the Little General or, you know, whatever Ned rig it is that you guys like to fish in those areas. And I think I could have generated a few more bites. So I got to get back to throwing the Ned rig around, just really good at generating bites from inactive fish. Another one I wish I would have thrown more. Uh, all right, well, and it's not just specifically this one, but this is one of them. This is the Q Bomb, uh, which is by G Crack. It's a kind of it was a new trend, came out around the Bassmaster Classic. Really difficult to get at that point, sold out. And you know, I fished with the dice, which is similar to this last year, and had no success. I was really didn't like it. Didn't like the feel of it. I just didn't like the presentation of it. And I feel like I've missed the boat a little bit because I know guys are using this with a lot of success these days. And I just need to commit more to it, to give it a try, figure out what the best applications are, different techniques to rig it on. You can put it on the core tackle wacky shot, which is a great hook for it. I just need to give it more time. I need to fully understand when and where to throw this because there's such unique style of baits that it's one of those things that I know I need this give it a handful of days, really try to figure out best presentations for it because I know guys are catching fish on it. And then the last bait, this is just an old standby, but I wish I had thrown more just small tungsten jigs. This is the Picasso little spotty jig with a little 3-inch Berkeley pit boss on the back. Such a standby bait for me. And I had these rigged up at like every tournament we went to. And I caught a handful of fish on it throughout the year, but it was one of those things where I felt like I never had the right presentation. And from that standpoint, it's like I need to put a jig in my hand more and fish it. And that's not necessarily just on shoreline cover. I think if I'm fishing, you know, offshore, forward facing sonar, we're seeing how valuable jigs can be. And that little spotty, that little tungsten jig is a dynamite little jig. So these are 5 baits that I just feel like I missed the boat on a little bit. You know, I had them and just didn't find the right time or place to use them. And I just need to spend more time developing, you know, my techniques with these baits because I know a lot of other pros out there, a lot of other fishermen out there are catching fish with them. So let me know in the comment section. I know there's some baits you guys probably missed the boat on as well. Why don't you share that in the comment section and stay tuned? We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.